that under normal circumstances, Aaron is not permitted to go into the Holy of Holies. However, on Yom Kippur, Bezos Yovo Aaron El HaKodesh, and we had mentioned yesterday the numerical value of Bezos is 410, which are the years that the first Beis HaMikdash actually stood. It was destroyed after 410 years. Bezos Yovo Aaron El HaKodesh Bar Ben Boker Lechatos, an ox, which is Ben Boker, which is a year old, for a sin offering, Vayel Olo, and a ram for a burnt offering. Ksodis Bat Kodesh Yilbosh, a shirt. This is the lengthy shirt made of linen. He should do a Michne Zivad Yi Al Besoro, and pants made of linen should be on his flesh. Ba'avni Bad Yachgor, and a sash or a belt made of linen he should be girded. Mitznevis Bad Yitznov, and the turban made of linen he should be adorned. Bigdei Kodeshem. They are vestments of holiness. V'rochatz b'mayim b'sorol veisham, and he first has to immerse himself in water. This is the equivalent. This is the mikvah, and then he wears them. So over here, Rashi cites the famous Chazal. Magid, Posek Dalet in Rashi, Mag Chein Mishamish Lifnim, Bishmona Begodim, Shumishamish Ben Bechutz. The Torah is telling us that when he officiates regarding the inner service, going into the Holy of Holies, he doesn't officiate with the 8 vestments as he does regarding the outside service. Sheish Behem Zov, Fish Ein Kategen Nasan Hager. Because the prosecutor cannot be the advocate, Ela Barbo, Kohen Hedju, to Kulin Shabutz, but rather with the 4 vestments which the common Kohen wears, which are all made of linen. Kodesh Yilbosh, Yuk B'Shel Kodesh. It has to be consecrated garments. So over here there's a Ramban in Posuk Gimel, B'zos Yovo Aaron El HaKodesh. Not sure if you have the Chumash that has the commentary of the Ramban. Rabbeinu Ramzu B'zeh, Chazal, they allude when it says, with this Aaron enters into the holies. Omer B'vayikar Rabba, Rab Yudin, Posak, Kori B'koyin Godel, B'chlisosel, B'skoch Kadoshim, Chavilos Chavil Shemitzu B'yodo. When he enters into the Holy of Holies, he comes literally with bundles and bundles of mitzvos, meaning he has this tremendous level of merit to be worthy to go in there. B'schus HaTorah, he has to have the merit of Torah. Why? Because we find regarding Torah, it says V'zos HaTorah. We say whenever we go Hag, they lift Torah, we say Zos HaTorah, Shos HaMoshe L'fnei B'nei Yisrael, V'zos. B'schus HaMilah, in the merit of Milah, of circumcision, Zos Brisi Asher Tishmru, it says regarding the Milah, the circumcision, it says Zos. B'schus Shabbos, Ashrei Enosh Yaseh Zos. B'schus Yushalayim, Mer Yushalayim, Zos Yushalayim, B'schus Hashvotim, in the merit of the tribes, Zos Asher Dibo Lem Aviem, B'schus Yehuda, in the merit of Yehuda, Zos Yehuda. It's interesting. The Pasuk Zos Yehuda, there's the bracha Moshe Rabbeinu gave to Yehuda before he passed away, and he gave the bracha to Yehuda. And Rashi over there cites Chazal that although Yehuda had taken responsibility for Binyamin when he had gone to Egypt, and he actually agreed to be an excommunicated state if he doesn't bring Binyamin back for 40 years, Moshe Yehuda's remains were actually rattling in the coffin, because the Gemara tells us in Makos that if a person assumes excommunication, even on a condition, and he fulfills the condition, but entering into a situation where it's uncertain what the outcome will be, the person actually is affected negatively by that excommunication. Moshe Rabbeinu supplicated Hashem that he should be released from that excommunication, because he's the one, when the whole story with Tamar, he had found out that she was pregnant, and he believed that she had actually was pregnant from another man, not from himself. He was about to have her put to death. That's the story. And when she told him on an illusionary level that the collateral was given to her by a man, and she didn't identify Yehuda, and Yehuda himself admitted that he's the one who fathered those children. So in the merit of that, openly admitting, he caused Ruvain to do tshuva for when he had switched the beds. B'schus Knesset Yisrael, in the merit of Klal Yisrael, Zos Komoscho, Domsel Tama, B'schus Hatruma, Zos Hatruma, B'schus Hamasros, in the merit of Maser, the tithing of the grain. It says B'chunui Gam no Bezos, B'schus HaKarbanos, Bezos Yovo Aaron, V'zet Tzorach Pirush Aruch, and the Ramban says, although we're citing all these various references of Zos, it needs a lengthy elucidation. But he says it's all included here, meaning somehow every one of these levels of representation, this merit allows him and gives him the level of worthiness. And these are the chavilos, the bundles and bundles of mitzvahs that he enters into the inner sanctums. Over here, the Orach Chaim HaKodesh. I'm looking for the Orach Chaim HaKodesh. Okay, we'll see in a moment. Me'esa das b'nei Yisrael yikach shnei sirim l'chatos. And from the congregation of the Yisrael, you should take 2 goats l'chatos for a sin offering. Vayel echad la'oloch, and a ram for a burnt offering. Now, is something very unusual. The halacha is by if you have a korban and you sacrifice it, you slaughter it outside of the Mishkan or outside of the Beis HaMikdash, it's referred to as shchutei chutz, and it carries the liability of koris. You're not permitted. Whether you slaughter it outside, you sacrifice it outside, it's a Torah violation. It's either called shchutei chutz or haktoras chutz. Yet one of these goats, which is thrown down that jagged mountain, it's referred to as sirei chatos. It's the goat of the sin offering. And the Ramban over here speaks lengthily. I mean, how do you bring something which seems to be a korban outside of the Mishkan? It's a Torah violation. Why over here on Yom Kippur does the Torah allow that there should be seemingly a korban being brought outside the Beis HaMikdash or outside the Mishkan? We'll see in a moment. Let's skip to Zion. V'lokech shnei asirim v'hemed osam lefnei Hashem pesach ol moed. Takes the two goats, he puts them before Hashem at the entrance of the communion tent. V'nosan al shnei asirim gorolos, and he puts on both of the goats lots. Gorol echad laHashem. On one of the lots it says laHashem. That means that goat will be sacrificed as a korban, as a sacrifice in the Mishkan. V'gorol echad laZozel. And the other lot says on it, Lazozel, means it should be thrown down the mountainside, the jagged mountain. I just want to skip. V'asor she'olo olov hagora Lazozel yobet chalifnei Hashem l'chaper l'shalchos Lazozel hamidboro. And the goat, which the lot had been written on it, Lazozel, it should be placed alive before Hashem to atone for the Jewish people. L'shalach osel azozel, it should be sent down that jagged mountain. And where is it located? Hamidbora. It's located in the desert. So over here the Ramban writes, what is the meaning of Lazozel? Lazozel har gavoa tzok kosher. It's a high mountain, which it has jagged rocks, stones. Ub'toras kanim Lazozel lemokom hakosher shebahorim. Talmud lo b'hamidbora. And where is the mountain located? In the desert. And Minayim Shutzok, and how do we know it has to be a high mountain, elevated location? And meaning with jagged rocks, stone, Talmud lo ma'aleretz gezerah. It means, the word gezerah means cut stones, mean to indicate jagged. Fize yepirush milat lazozel lekosher, meaning down a mountain which has tremendous negative effect on the animal. Vu kofel zayin, izus v'gibor. It's to like emphasize the zayin, which means extremely jagged. So over here he cites the Ibn Ezra that both of these goats, Reb Avrom Kosev, Omar Rav Shmuel, Alpi shekosev b'sor hachato shu Lashem, gam asor hab'shtei chud Lashem. That both goats are for Hashem, ve'ein tzorech. Now this is a very important point. Ki ha'mishtalech enenu korban. The goat that's thrown down the mountainside is not a sacrifice. Although we see the Kohen, he confesses on the goat, the second goat that goes to the mountainside is not a sacrifice. Shlo yishachit, because we see it's not slaughtered. V'micholes lohovin asod, shu acha milas lazozel teda sodo v'sod shemo. Let's go down. Amr ben Bereshis Rabbo, v'noso hasor olov. It says this goat carries all the sins of the Jewish people on it. That's what we find, that The one who takes the goat out into the desert, throw it down the mountainside, he becomes contaminated. There's such a heavy, the level of sin which is on the animal causes that the person who transfers it into the desert and throws it down the mountainside, he himself becomes contaminated. Listen, Omrei Shisrabba V'nosa Hasor Olov Ze Esov. The sawyer alludes to Esov. Shenemar Hein Esov Ochi Ish Sawyer. Yaakov Avinu, when originally he had gone, told by his mother to take the birthright, so he says to his mother, Rivka, my brother Esau is a hairy man. I'm smooth-skinned. The moment my father touches me, he's going to realize that I'm not my brother. Es kol avonosam, avonus tam. It carries all avonosam. What is the word? Their sins. But it's an acronym, avonus tam. It's the sins of the tam. Who's the sins of the tam? Yaakov is referred to Ishtam Yoshev Holim. He's the perfect man who dwells in the tent. Shnema Yaakov Ishtam. First, Mizeh, the picture Rebbe Lezer Hagodol. Leficha Choyenosin L'Samach Mem. Again, this name we don't even pronounce. It has such a negative level of representation. The source of all evil is called Samach Mem. That's a Satan in his true form. And the one who had seduced Chava of the Eitz Adas, and ultimately was given to Odom, it was Samach Mem. Hayunosel Samach Mem, Shoichad B'Yom Kippurim, Shulavatel es Karbonom. The Sor Lazazel were giving bribery to Samach Mem, to the source of all evil, were bribing him that he shouldn't interfere with the Korban in the Mishkan or Beis HaMikdash, that it should not atone for the Jewish people. One of the lots is Lashem, the Gorel Echod Lazozel. Gorolo Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu L'Korbanolo. God's lot is, he receives the burnt offering. Gorolo Shel Azozel, I'm reading the Pirkei Rebbe Lezer. And the lot of the Azozel, Sirachatos, V'chol Avon L'Sem Shel Shololov. It's the goat which carries the sins, all the sins of the Jewish people on it. Ros Samach Mem Shlol Nibs Ben Chet B'Yom Kippurim. The Samach Mem, when he comes to prosecute the Jewish people on Yom Kippur, although the Gemara says in two locations, Hasoton, numerically is 364. That is 1 day a year, Hashem does not allow Satan to prosecute the Jewish people. But yet, the Pirkei Rebbe Lezer says, Samach Mem comes to Hashem, and he sees there's no sin. The Jews are sinless. And he speaks praiseworthily about the Jewish people. He says, it seems to be that the Jewish people, like angels in heaven, they're sinless. Just as an angel is sinless, the Jewish people are sinless. Just as angels are barefooted, they mean they wear no shoes. Kach hem Yisrael yichefi regel. B'Yom Kippurim, on Yom Kippur, ma'amal cheshores ein be'em achilu shtiyah. Just as angels don't eat or drink, kach Yisrael ein be'em achilu shtiyah b'Yom Kippurim. Ma'amal cheshores ein lem kfitza. Kach Yisrael omdem ragleim b'Yom Kippurim. Just as angels don't walk, meaning they stand in one location. The Jewish people, they stand on their feet all day. Malchei Shores Sholem mitavich beineim. Just as angels, there's no strife between them. There's peace among them. Kach heim Yisrael Sholem mitavich beineim b'Yom Kippurim. On Yom Kippur, the Jews, there's a cohesiveness. There's a unity among them. Malchei Shores nikim mikol chet. Just as angels are free of clean of sin, Kach Yisrael hem nekim mikol chet b'Yom Kippurim. VaKadosh Baruch Hu shomea edusin shel Yisrael min hakateger shelhem. Here Hashem here's the testimony of the ultimate prosecutor of the Jewish people. That what? That the Jews are sin free. They're like angels. Umechaper al hamizbeach v'al hamikdosh v'al hakohanim. and God atones for the Mizbeach, the Migdosh, the Kohanim, Al-Kol, Amakol, of all the Jewish people. Shneba v'chiber es Migdosh HaKodesh. He will atone the Migdosh, which is sanctified. Ad kan agodazu, v'in hodienu shmo u'maseu. Okay? Now he's going to explain what this Pirkei Rebbe Lezer is saying. We're saying that the Sor Lazozel is shochad, is bribery for Samach Mem, and due to giving him this bribery, which carries all the sins of the Jewish people, he speaks in the most admirable, praiseworthy way about the Jewish people, and because of that, Hashem forgives us for all the sins. So from the Pirkei Rebbe Lezer, it's indicated that the reason why the Sultan doesn't prosecute, which is Hasoton, is not because God just silences him. Because God created a scenario due to the bribery which we give him, because he's bribed, he will explain what this means, the Ramban, therefore he's silenced, and if he's silenced, there's no prosecution. And if Sultan speaks so praiseworthily about the Jewish people, God himself says, if that is the case, I will forgive you for everything. Now, he says, what is the secret of all this that he's speaking about? Idolaters, who did they worship? They worshipped alien gods. Who are they? Hema Malochim, Osem Lem Korbonos. It's the angels. They would actually worship angels, powers. These are the deities. And they would bring sacrifices. V'heim lehem l'reach nichoach, kinyin shenemar. Ushemoni v'katorosi nosati l'fneim. My oil and my sacrifices, or my incense offerings, you brought before them. V'lachmi shonosati loch solas shemen udvash. Hechalticho nosatio l'fneim l'reich nichoach. V'yinoam Hashem Elokim. Totzorach l'boneim because of mikro. Okay. V'hinei. HaTorah osra legamri kabolas elohusam chalavod Elohem. The Torah prohibits accepting, acknowledging any of the powers, that they have any value, or to serve them to any degree. That's called idolatry. Avot tzivo HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'Yom Kippurim, but nevertheless God commanded us on Yom Kippur, shenashaleach sor b'midbar, l'sara moshel b'mekomos ha'chorban. We should bring the sor, the goat, in the desert, which over there, the power that reigns in the location of everything which is desolate, which is total destruction. The desert it represents desolation. V'roilo b'bnei shu balov umatzlius kocho yova churban ushmamon ha'elo lekochvei hacherev ha'adomim v'amulchomos v'amrivos v'aptsoim v'amakos ha'pirut v'achurban. You hear this? He says, why is the desert, which represents desolation, lack of structure, lack of life, why is that the location of the angel, which represents death and suffering and blood and wounds and destruction? Because since he's the cause of all that, it identifies with his habitat. His habitat is the desert. That's Samach Mem. The angel, Samach Mem, is the ultimate prosecutor of the world and the prosecutor of the Jewish people. So what is the appropriate location for him? The location that reflects what he brings about, which is total destruction. V'klal nefesh l'galgel madim. If you remember, when Paro had said, Ro'ad neged penechem, that there's a star called the Red Star, and therefore which indicates death and bloodshed for the Jewish people, which is the desert, therefore I'm not sending you out. The Samach Mem represents, that's the Red Star. V'chilku min ha'umos hu, chelko she'umos hu Esav. There? The portion of the nations is Esav. That is their lot. Esav's lot is the lot of the nations. Shu am hayoresh hacherev v'mulchomos. They are the nations. What's the lot? They are the heirs of the sword and wars. That's the physical world, fighting for the physical. Umin habehemus hasirim vo'izim. Ubechelko od hashedim v'nikro mazikim b'loshon Rabbeinu. In that area, that classification, we find the demons. The demons are part of that. Ubeloshen hakosuv sirim. The demons are referred to as sirim, as goats. Chen yikra hu v'musosoyer. Because Esav and the Samach Mem are called Sorev. Ve'en hakavona b'sar mishtalech. She korban mitonu elov chalilo. He says, never consider for a moment that the goat that's sent into the desert to be dismembered when it's thrown down the Jack mountain, it doesn't mean, God forbid, that this is a korban. We're following instructions. God tells us what to do, exactly how to seduce Samach Mem, how to silence him, and to see the Jewish people in the most positive light. He says, what is analogous? What is this analogous to? They make a banquet for the master. And the one who's hosting the master, he tells him, I want you to take a portion of that meal, of that banquet, and give it to one of my servants. Why? When the one who's hosting the banquet gives that portion to that servant, to that slave, he's not giving it to honor the slave, to acknowledge, to give the slave any value. Rakakol nosa lo'odon. The portion is the master's. V'odon nosa pras lavdo. And the master says, is giving his portion to that slave. But so why is the master telling the host to do this? Because he has mercy and concern for the host. Because he wants even that servant, that slave, to speak praiseworthy, that my master is concerned about me. So he's giving a portion of that banquet. Zetam hagorolos. That's the reason why. How do you choose the goat that's thrown down the mountainside? It's not through consecration, but rather it's through the lottery. Now, when you draw a lot, who is the determinator of which goat the lot comes out? It's up to God. That's since God is the one who's designating the goat that goes down the mountainside. Because if the Kohen would consecrate that goat for Hashem, and also it should go down the mountainside, so then it's what? You're designated, that you're worshiping that Samach Mem, that negative force. Both goats he's giving to Hashem. And now the other goat, he's doing with it what Hashem says do with it. But it's not a sacrifice. Everything's from God. He brings it again before Hashem. He says, this is your portion. And Hashem says, I'm telling you what to do with it. And when we send it into the desert to be thrown down the mountainside, we're following God's instructions. It's purely to send it out into the desert. We don't slaughter it. Because we're not slaughtering it, we bring it for Hashem. It's given to God. Here we designate for God, and He tells us what to do with it. Okay, we're going to stop here today on this. We'll continue this tomorrow.